Hello one and all, welcome back to ArcheAge Inspiration. My name is Cilantro. Today's rolls are 3, 5, and 8. Let us see what we get. Looks like, well, I already have some of them at least. Occultism, Songcraft, and Archery? 3, 5, 8. Whew. This one's gonna be fun. Gravesinger. Well, at least it's got a cool name. Alright, time to hit the books. Decided to have a little bit of fun with this one. I spent a little bit of time trying to find some actual proper synergies and did come up with a few of them. This is kind of a little bit, I mean, it feels like a cop-out because there's so few actual synergies. I mean, you're going to have issues gearing properly for this particular build. You're kind of all over the place in terms of what attacks you're going to be using. You can't really play it as like a hard support because as good as Songcraft is, there's not enough in occultism and archery to help support it properly. I mean, I knew when I came into this series, 120 different classes, that there were going to be some that were just going to be really hard to make anything out of at all. And this was a tough one. But I think I found something that's at least fun. I mean, fun doesn't mean good, fun doesn't mean practical, but fun just means fun. You know, sometimes it's nice to have just a really goofy spec you can use. So it's kind of what I went for with this. So we'll get to the Songcraft component here in a minute, even though it's only one piece. But to open up, to start here, occultism is the big source of damage here. So we have urgency, which is not usually taken, but there's a big reason to take that. Because in combination with Death's Beckoning, it reduces the cooldown of Crippling Mire almost to the point where it's spammable. It's kind of cool, actually. It sort of turns into an actual regular attack that you can do. And Crippling Mire actually scales reasonably well. 420% magic attack is not too bad. Not bad at all. We take Hell Spear and Summon Crows just for general utility. Also noting that Summon Crows does poison, allowing for more synergy with Piercing Shot. Absorb Life Force is another option as well if you need some extra hit points back. And then we took a lot of passives from both the occultism and archery trees. Now the interesting thing about these passives here is that they all trigger when you take damage, and some of them trigger when you take critical damage. If you've seen other videos in this series, you probably know where I'm going with this. If you use Rhythmic Renewal before, say, a boss fight. By the way, this definitely is a PvE build. I would not even contemplate taking this in a PvP fight. You have no ability in PvP fight. But for a pure damage and fun PvE build, you cast Rhythmic Renewal, and you can, of course, switch over to a healing weapon if you wish. So I'll go ahead and just do that real quick. And then you can switch back to your damage thing. So this actually lasts for a full minute. And if you watch here, every time it ticks, it will trigger my overpowered spell locus, and then whenever it crits, it will also trigger my critical passives. The crits are going to be sort of few and far between, but they will actually cause reprisal and intensified harm to actually crit and pop up on a pretty regular basis. It is, again, it's luck dependent. I'm not 100% certain if it will actually trigger if you are not taking any damage. Not certain about that, but it will definitely work for overpowered spell locus. And so as long as you're standing still here, it's going to give you a magic attack boost. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so yeah, intensified harm, reprisal, both of these kicking in for magical crit modifier. So kind of interesting stuff. Your uptime is going to be reasonably decent. It has a 1:30 cooldown with a 60-second duration, so you can keep it up about 2/3 of the time. Rather mana intensive, but it does earn you a good boost to your damage, as well as healing your nearby party members. I mean, just having the healing staff on with that, it actually is a pretty respectable amount of healing. Although, come to think of it, it won't actually remember your healing power when you, yeah, I just remembered that. It won't actually remember your healing power because of how it recalculates damage every time. So I misspoke. But it will still at least allow you to heal for a little bit if nobody else is using Rhythmic Renewal. I'm not 100% certain if they stack or not with other ones. Anyway, so the archery component here, you have Charge Bolt for a slow. Lots of synergies with slows here, as Piercing Shot will increase the severity of a slow. Crippling Mire also inflicts slow, and I'm not 100% certain, actually I'll probably try to test this, if Piercing Shot only afflicts its slow increase after a or on the initial attack. I don't think the damage over time actually has anything to do with it. So it looks like it's synergistic because you could Crippling Mire, but as soon as the Crippling Mire stops, the slow goes away. So I don't think you can quite do that. But there's some synergy here because Charge Bolt does slow. Piercing Shot amplifies the slow. And then you have Crippling Mire for a ton of damage, even more damage while the target is bleeding, which is good. Also note that the bleed duration is longer than the cooldown. So you can actually use Piercing Shot to stack on itself. Piercing Shot does more damage as well if you use Endless Arrows. Just an option. I would recommend using Crippling Mire as much as you can. Double Recurve for just straight up damage. Deadeye for straight up damage. Intensity for crit damage. And then all the passives here are taken just pretty much to boost your damage. So you end up with a very weird class that has a very small amount of actual active abilities. As you can see, I have very few. I'll see if I can't knock out one of these. Wow, lots of people around. Oh, I think because of the winter event, people are farming these because they drop certain things. Let's see if I can't find a giant to beat up on somewhere. Yeah, I'll be right back. Alright, we found a giant. I think a lot of people have been very much taking over some of these camps. So let's give ourselves urgency. You would do this before a PvP fight, or PvE fight rather. I mean, if your tank is pulling and starting to get threat, I mean, always good to make sure that you're not going to pull threat from anybody. And then you can just start a rotation here. Start off with the first 2 bow attacks and then immediately into Crippling Mire. This is actually a pretty respectable amount of damage. I mean, for actual pure DPS, that's not bad at all. And as you can see, the cooldown is relatively short on Crippling Mire. If I can restack. Okay, I just barely missed the restack of the bleed. And then another Crippling Mire here. As you can see, though, this is a decent amount of damage. I mean, one of the problems with this build potentially is mana. I try to make it as mana efficient as possible, but you'll definitely burn through your mana fairly quickly. Of course, I am using Spirit Gear because it's just what I happen to have for other classes. So if you had a large amount of intelligence, you would have a much wider mana pool, which would allow you to last a lot longer in a fight. But honestly, I mean, especially with the critical things triggering for Crippling Mire, I think you can do a pretty darn decent amount of damage with this in a PvE environment. It's pretty shaky. You can't really move around too much. But if you have a fight where you can just literally sit there and do nothing but do damage, it has the potential. Looks like, wow, these giants are really camped all over the place. But I pretty much got to show you exactly what I wanted to show you anyway, is the few amounts of synergy you have. If you want to pick up some other things, potentially summon Wraith for AoE clearing, just for its decent amount of damage, you could always grab Concussive Arrow, Missile Rain, maybe get deeper into Songcraft, forsaking some of these passives. But I feel like this particular build is, because it's so focused between the synergy between Piercing Shot and Crippling Mire with Charge Bolt thrown in there, you kind of have to just go all in on those and continue to use that. But Crippling Mire's always been one of my favorite spells, and to see it actually do a good amount of damage was pretty interesting. So that's all I really have to say about the Gravesinger. Good luck making this build work, and I'll see you next time.